Okay. Okay, I hope everyone is still having a good summer. Good. Okay. The next part we're going to learn is very, very, very interesting. The gist of today's discussion is more or less the role that the non-Jew plays in Tevilas Kalim, Tevel and Kalim. So, as we explained many times, one of the basic requirements that obligates one to Tevel a certain vessel is that it was owned previously by a non-Jew, and you acquired it from the non-Jew. What happens if you own a pot? And you take this pot, we're going to keep using the example of a pot because it's the most basic vessel, I think, in my head at least. You take the pot and you sell it to Frank the non-Jew. That's his name, for all intents and purposes. Frank, would you like to buy a pot? Oh, I'd love to buy a pot. And he buys a pot from you. Then, I don't know, the next day, or a few hours later, you're thinking, that was a good pot. You know what? Let me see if he's willing to sell it back. He comes back to Frank, and he's about to knock on his door, and Frank opens the door before he even knocks, and he says, oh, Shalom, I was just about to call you. He says, why? He says, I don't want your pot anymore. He said, oh. So he buys the pot back from Frank. The Shulchan Aruch says he has to tevel this pot because it belonged to Frank. And now he's buying it from Frank. Not only that, if you had owned a pot and you had teveled it already, it's already been teveled, and you sell it to a non-Jew, it could be 30 seconds that the person owns it. If it's in that person's possession for any amount of time, belongs to them, and you acquire it back from them, you need to re-tevel it. Yeah. Another kind of scenario where this plays in is, let's use Frank again, because he's a nice guy. Let's say you borrow a sum of money from Frank. Okay? You borrow $1,000. You need a quick, whatever it is, you borrow $1,000, you'll pay him back at some point. And you want him to feel secure that he's going to get his money back. So he lends you money, so you give him a deposit. You give him a collateral. Something that, he feels like assured that, he's going to come back for this thing, and when he pays back his money. So you give him a very fancy, metal serving dish that you got from your great-grandmother. I don't know. Very fancy, very worth, hundreds of dollars, $1,000. And he says, you say, Frank, thank you for the $1,000. Here's this beautiful dish that my great-grandmother gave me, all the way back from her great-grandmother. It's very, very precious. This is collateral for the $1,000. When I give you back the $1,000, I would like it back. Sure. When you come back to take back I'm emphasizing the word your serving tray, you do not need to tevel it because it did not belong to Frank. He was holding it as a deposit, as a collateral. However, the commentary of the Shach points out that if, for whatever the reason, you decided you actually don't want your great-grandmother's thing anymore, and you come to Frank and you say, can I borrow $1,000? And he says, sure, and you want to give a collateral, and you give it to him, but when you give it to him, you say, I'm going to come back and pay him back, but let Frank keep it. Let Frank keep the collateral. You don't say that. It's in your head. And you come back to, a few weeks later with $1,000 to pay him back, and you see the serving dish, the beautiful dish from your great-great-grandmother's great-great-grandmother, sitting on his dining room table, and you say, nah, I really want it back, actually. That was a really nice dish. I feel bad. Good grandmother. So you give back the $1,000 to him, and you say, and he's, what's the expression? None the wiser. You never told him you were planning on letting him keep it. You weren't planning on coming back for it, and you take it back from him. The shach says you need to tovel this again. It has to be tovel because you weren't planning on coming back for it. You had no intentions of taking it back. You wanted Frank to keep it. As far as you're concerned, it's his. It belongs to him. And when you take it back, you need to tovel it. A very interesting one, which is, if you own a vessel in a partnership with a non-Jew, right? So Shalom and Frank LLC, whatever, you make a partnership, and you both jointly own a fancy pot or some cutlery, whatever it is. Shulchan Aruch rules, the Ramah rules, that this does not need to be tovel, it is completely exempt from tevila. Interesting thing to know. There's a whole discussion here about if bandits came, non-Jewish bandits came and stole some of your vessels. If you get them back, do you need to tovel them? It depends. There's a discussion whether it depends whether it's just a regular bandit or a thief, or it's like the government takes it. It's not. I'm not going to get into it now. But one thing I do want to add is that the next little part over here is that you need to tovel the entire vessel, including its handles. When you're toveling your vessel, if it has handles like a pot, even though the handles are like secondary to the pot, the pot itself is the vessel. The handles are just a way to hold it. Yes, practically it's very difficult to maneuver a pot without handles, but bear with me. The handles are not essential to the pot. They're secondary. In theory, you can do without them. Still, you have to tovel the entire pot with its handles. What says? Okay. Tomorrow, God willing, we are going to learn about rust. Okay, have a great night.